Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Relationships. How much of an intimate friendship do you think it's okay for one ex-spouse to keep with the other while being engaged to someone else? I know that may sound weird, but listen to the story and you'll see what I mean. This one is from user Engaged Throwaway. My 26 female, fiance's 28 male, ex-wife 28 female has cancer. He's moved in with her and postponed our wedding. Max and I dated for 2 years and have been engaged for 9 months, with the wedding date set for next year. We have a healthy, honest relationship, and I've never had any reason to doubt him. He and Caroline were high school sweethearts who married very young. They were both 22, right out of college. They divorced after 2 years. Max told me that they got married too quickly and didn't realize how different their relationship would be in the real world. It is when they were both working full-time jobs and struggling to pay the rent. They split up on good terms, but didn't keep in touch. He remained in our home city while she pursued a modeling career and began traveling extensively. 3 months ago, Caroline contacted Max over Facebook out of the blue, saying she was in town and wanted to meet for coffee. He agreed. Over coffee, she told him that she had recently been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Her odds of survival were low, but she was determined to fight it through surgery and chemo. She said that all she wanted was for Max to be by her side throughout her treatment. Caroline's parents died shortly after she married Max. She has no siblings and the rest of her family lives overseas. She described Max as the closest thing to family she has left. I absolutely sympathize with Caroline. The next day, Max had her over to our apartment and she was completely lovely, clearly trying very hard to be optimistic even in the face of her life potentially ending before she turns 30. I feel terrible for her and for the situation that she's in, and I fully supported Max being there for her. Her first surgery was later that month. Max flew across the country. We live on the East Coast, she's on the West, and checked into a hotel a few minutes from her apartment. He's a writer, so working from his laptop is no issue. We spoke on the phone or on Skype almost every day for the 2 weeks he was over there. Caroline had her surgery and unfortunately it was not entirely successful. Her doctors moved to the next method, chemo. Max came home after her surgery to tell me this. He explained that Caroline's treatment plan was to begin soon and end around the time of our wedding. It would be an incredibly difficult time period for her and she wanted him with her at all times. We can't afford to pay for a hotel until the end of her treatment, so he moved into her apartment, sleeping on her sofa. He's been there for the past month and we continue to Skype, though only a couple of times a week now. When we spoke yesterday, Max gently told me that based on Caroline's condition, he wouldn't feel right leaving her so close to the end of her treatment. He'd like for us to postpone the wedding for a month, at the very least, so that he can stay with her until her treatment is over. I'm so conflicted. I feel awful for resenting Caroline at all. She has cancer. She's suffering immensely, but the resentment is still there. I resent her for needing Max constantly holding her hand, as though she has absolutely no friends of her own. I resent Max too, for agreeing to this situation. We won't be seeing each other in person for months, on top of our wedding being postponed. I don't know what to do. I have no idea how I'm supposed to feel. Right now, I'm just full of anger and guilt, and I don't know how to explain it to anyone else in my life. OP, unfortunately, you are in a no-win situation. On one hand, if you say, no Max, you should come home to me and we should get ready for our wedding, and Caroline should be with friends other than you, then yeah, that would put you in a very negative light in the eyes of Max and of course yourself, because you are empathizing with Caroline's horrible situation. On the other hand, the fact that Caroline is requesting that your fiancé stays with her every day until her treatment is over is a lot to ask, and Max isn't helping the situation by agreeing to it and moving into her apartment. So this resentment that you have is completely justified. What do you guys think? Well, before we move on to the update to see how this story unravels, let's take a look at the top 3 comments of the community to see what kind of advice they give OP. Patranus says, "You have the right to resent Max. He picked his ex-wife over his fiancée. He may feel like he has a responsibility to her, but he has a responsibility to his future wife. He is asking you to put your life on hold for his ex-wife. You absolutely have the right to feel angry about this. Can you see yourself marrying him after this?" OP responds, "Honestly, I don't know. Part of me feels like I should admire him, as in, oh, look at how selfless he's being for her. But the other part is thinking, but what about me? I want him to come home, but am I really going to demand that he leave his dying ex-wife alone?" Before he left, he said, "We've got our whole lives to spend together. She might only have a year." Veggies, goddammit, says, "I feel horribly crass saying this, but I can't imagine them living together as former lovers near the possible end of her life and them not sleeping together at some point. Admittedly, she'll be in an awful physical state, but it's such an emotionally charged situation that it's highly likely. It might be a good idea to schedule a couple of sessions with an experienced relationship and grief counselor because it's an unusual problem, and if handled inappropriately, it could end your relationship." Remember Coombe Valley says, "He's intending on living with his ex until a month after your wedding date was set, and you are to do what? Just wait? No, your resentment and discomfort is not wrong. I feel intense sympathy for her. For your partner, absolutely. Death is a terrifying cold thing, but he's supposed to be with you. It was not her right to ask him to be with her as a husband is through this horror. Did she ask you? My fear is, okay, so the date comes, her chemo's done. Now she's weak and miserable from chemo. Is he going to leave her then? Feeling like that? He should not have asked you over Skype. He should have been there in person. When is the next time you are supposed to see him?" OP's edit. Everyone seems to be in agreement that this is a completely inappropriate, if incredibly sad, situation that Max isn't handling very well. I'll speak to him either tonight or tomorrow, whenever we Skype next, and tell him in no uncertain terms that I want him to come home. From there, we can decide what to do, since I don't want to leave Caroline high and dry. But him living there until the treatment is over is out of the question. Okay, at least OP is over feeling like the bad guy for putting her relationship first, which is the healthy thing. Now let's move on to the update to see what happened. First off, thank you all so much for your advice and words of support. I'm sorry that I couldn't reply to every comment, reply, or PM that I got, but I woke up to a logged post and over 100 unread messages. I promise I did read through every one of them. Each perspective was incredibly helpful and made me look at the situation in a completely different way. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I spoke to Max this morning. I told him that as terrible as I feel for Caroline, I don't want him living over there until the treatment is over. I suggested that we brainstorm some sort of schedule that allowed him to continue visiting her, even postponing our honeymoon and using that money to find his plane tickets. Several commenters brought up her moving over here for treatment, so I mentioned that as well, offering up our spare bedroom. I emphasized that I didn't fault him for wanting to help an old loved one in what could be her final days, but that I couldn't help but feel marginalized, especially so close to our wedding. Max didn't speak very much, just listened while I rambled on. When I couldn't think of anything else to add, I asked him to please say something. So, he told me the truth. Caroline was never stage 4, she was stage 2. He assured me that the rest of his story is true. Caroline asking him to be with her, the initial surgery being unsuccessful, her chemo treatment plan, etc. But apparently, her chances of survival are far greater than he led me to believe. Max said he lied because he felt it was the only way I could understand his need to be with her. He thought that if her situation seemed less dire than literal life or death, I wouldn't agree to him essentially moving across the country for her. He admitted to telling her that our wedding had been postponed to after her treatment was over, giving her the impression that him being away until then would be no problem. He has also been the one insisting on remaining by her side. After her surgery, she had given him permission to return home, saying it wouldn't be fair to pressure him into living with her throughout her entire chemo treatment as much as she would have liked him there. He refused to leave. He told her that I supported his decision fully. Max swears that he's not in love with her still, but I just can't believe that. He lied to my face. Before she visited our apartment before all of this, he warned me not to mention her being stage 4 as she was still extremely sensitive about it, and I completely bought into that lie. I trusted him. He put his past with her over his future with me. I'll be spending the next few months apartment hunting and canceling wedding plans. Thank you all for your kind words. Edit. I'm blown away by the outpouring of support I'm receiving. I wish I could respond to each of you individually. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful community and I truly appreciate all of your thoughts. Wow. OP, it's heartbreaking, but at least you're not marrying some guy that's willing to lie to you like that. He went about it so wrong that he truly doesn't deserve to be with you. He lied to you. That's one of the cardinal key things you don't do in a relationship. In my opinion, trust is one of the key pillars that holds love, the other two being admiration and chemistry. But if one of them fails, then the relationship fails. A relationship without trust is not a healthy relationship. I admire your resolve to end the relationship and everything that has to do with it. That is the difficult decision to make, but you made it. So good for you and all the best in the future. And on that note, let's move on to the next post. In my quest of expanding the content of this channel and trying out new things, this next post comes from a very different subreddit than the ones I usually get stories from. So as an intro to the post, I would ask you guys a question. Have you ever lied on your resume? Or as some people say, have you ever beautified your resume? This one's from user Degree of Intelligence. I lied on my CV and got the job. Now it might come out and I'm breaking it. A few years ago, I was looking to switch careers before entering my 30s and was getting pretty frustrated with all of the jobs where being educated to degree level is essential. I worked my way up through the company where I was for 10 years, and most of the jobs I was looking at were well within my skill set. I wasn't looking at anything that required specialist training or qualifications and was feeling that because I hadn't spent 30 grand to get a piece of paper. I was being shut out of a lot of opportunities. So I decided to add an extra line to my CV, which said that I attended university and come away with a 2-2, second class honor, lower division, in a pretty broad subject. If any of the jobs requested a copy of my degree, I would blag a story about not having access to it. Almost instantly, I started getting interview requests from the jobs that I applied for, one of which I accepted and have been working for the last 2 years. A few nights ago, I was out for drinks with a colleague and I let it slip in the course of conversation that I didn't go to uni. The colleague in question got pretty angry that he was working at the same level as someone who hadn't paid their way through education like they had and stormed off, but not before promising to report me to management later on this week. What are the potential ramifications here? I'm guessing that I'll be in breach of my contract, so they'll probably be able to sack me straight off. But is there any other legal action that could be taken against me at all? What should I be preparing for if the worst happens? Edit, I'm in England. Okay, granted that OP did a lot more than just beautify his CV by, changing a few words here and there. He outright lied about having a degree that would have gotten him the job. But the question stands. What adds the most value to a company's work? Skills developed through experience or theoretical skills learned through a classroom? I would say maybe both of them together. But in the case that you don't have that degree and you've been, like this guy, working 10 years and have accumulated a skill set that allows him to properly do the job and add value to the company, then why would having a particular degree be a price of admission? As a side note, to add a little context to my commentary, I went to university. I did pre-grad, post-grad, and got a master's. But I do agree with OP that some jobs are out of reach for people that could do fantastic in them just because they don't have a particular degree. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, we're gonna read one comment that has all the scenarios in it and then the update to see what happened to OP. Litigant in person says, what are the potential ramifications here? The best case scenario, nothing happens. Drunk coworker forgets. The least best case scenario, company investigates, are happy with your work, give you a slap on the wrist for lying. The worst case scenario, you will be sacked. And the worst case scenario, they review your work, find incredible defects in your work that has cost them money due to not being educated as you claimed, and sue you for the loss and damages to repair your work, plus paying their costs. This is not that likely, but depends on your job and the type of work you do. Also, quote, the colleague in question got pretty angry that he was working at the same level as someone who hadn't paid their way through education like they had, end quote. That's super dumb. OP responds, okay, thanks. That's not as bad as I thought. I've had 2 annual reviews since I started and both have been pretty good. Overall, my manager seems pretty happy with the work that I've done. Quote, that's super dumb, end quote. That's why I felt comfortable to let it slip. I didn't think it would be as big a deal to someone. So now we move on to the update. I want to start by clarifying a few things. I realized that my wording of paying 30 grand for a piece of paper was disrespectful to people who have genuinely worked hard to get a degree, and I apologize for that. I didn't mean to diminish the value of getting a degree in any way, or the hard work, time, and stress that goes into further education. My main point of frustration is regarding workplaces that add the line "educated to degree level is essential" to a job ad where that role clearly doesn't require one. It effectively stonewalls people like myself, who, for several uncontrollable reasons, didn't get to go to uni and instead have spent many years working tirelessly, earning real workplace experience, and creates a situation where the best person for the job may not even be considered because they didn't go to university. Some of the people that I work with have little to no workplace experience, but do have degrees that are completely irrelevant. Why does that make them more qualified for a job over someone with actual experience within that role? That being said, I would never apply for a job like being a doctor, an engineer, an architect, or any other highly skilled careers that require specific qualifications earned through many years of hard work and further education. With that out of the way, on to the update. So I called my manager over the weekend and explained the whole situation to him. After reading all of the responses to my post, I started to feel like no matter the outcome, getting out ahead and admitting what I'd done was going to be best in the long run. It turns out my colleague hadn't bothered to say anything about it, but I am glad that I did. My manager was pretty angry about the breach of trust, but was a lot calmer than I thought he would be. Said not to worry about it too much and to leave it with him over the weekend. After getting into work this morning, I was immediately called into a meeting with my manager and one of the company directors. I felt like maybe this was the end, but it wasn't quite as dire as that. Both of them agree that my work has been pretty good and want to keep me on, but agree that there does need to be ramifications for the dishonesty. The main part of my punishment is that for the next 3 years, I will not be promoted or receive a pay rise. I am effectively frozen within my role until the end of 2022. I feel like this punishment will feel more and more severe as time goes by, but I'm prepared to take it. The 3-year time frame is purposely symbolic of the time that I would have spent getting a degree. The incredibly positive part, however, is that the company is willing to partially fund further education for me so that I can legitimize my future career prospects. I was not expecting this at all, and honestly, got a bit emotional when my manager started talking about it. After explaining the reason behind why I lied, they have also agreed to reevaluate their hiring process, job ads for some of the roles so that a degree is added to the desirable but not essential field. For obvious reasons, we are going to be keeping all of this between the 3 of us. I have informed both of them that I let slip to my colleague, and I believe they are going to speak with him as well. All in all, I feel pretty lucky and grateful for this outcome and want to thank most of you for your advice but not so much for the people who PM'd me calling me all kinds of names. Well, I would say your story, OP, ended the best way possible. Now, considering that lying on your resume is a bad thing, I feel that your manager and your director saw your talent and saw that you are good for the job and actually understood that not all jobs are required to have a certain degree. Hence your punishment, which is something that is deserved for lying, and the fact that they're willing to change their hiring process. And on top of that, the fact that they are willing to co-fund your education is fantastic. That is a great way for your company to show how much they value you because they're willing to bet on your future. That's awesome, OP. All the best to you and your future career prospects. And so we've reached the end of the video. I truly hope you guys liked it. If you did, go ahead and click like. Of course, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Also, here are more videos from my channel that you might enjoy. And having said all that, I will see you guys on the next video.